The city breathed danger. It always had. I moved through the dimly lit streets, my steps quiet, my eyes alert. The neon signs flickered against the damp pavement, the air thick with the scent of gasoline and desperation. The world around me pulsed with the kind of trouble I used to run toward. Now I just try to survive it. I had once worn a badge, once believed in justice, but the system had a way of chewing people up and spitting them out. I wasn't a cop anymore, just another forgotten name in a place that didn't care. Then I heard it, a muffled cry, small, scared. I stopped. My pulse spiked. A dark alley, a shadow moving. And then I saw him, a boy, no older than 10, struggling against a man's grip. The kid fought hard, his little fists swinging wildly, but the man was stronger. He pulled the child deeper into the alley, his movements swift, practiced. Every instinct in me roared to life. Hey! My voice cut through the night like a blade. The man turned, his grip tightening on the boy's arm. His expression hardened as his eyes locked onto mine. Walk away, he warned, his tone low, measured. Like hell. I took a step forward, my stance shifting automatically, muscle memory from years of training. My voice was steady, controlled. Let him go. The man exhaled through his nose, annoyed, but not threatened. This isn't your business. The kid's wide, terrified eyes met mine. He needed help. I had two choices: listen to reason and back off, or step into something that could cost me more than I was ready to pay. I chose the only option I could live with. I moved fast. The man barely had time to react before my elbow slammed into his ribs. He grunted, his grip loosening just enough for the kid to yank free. Run, I ordered. The boy didn't hesitate. He bolted past me, his small frame vanishing into the dark streets. I turned back just in time to see the man recover. His smirk was gone. Now, there was only anger. You just made a mistake, he growled. I braced myself. Not my first. Then, the roar of an engine cut through the air. A black SUV rolled up to the alley's entrance, its tinted windows reflecting the streetlights. The tension in the air shifted. Something was very, very wrong. The back door opened. Two men stepped out, dressed in dark suits, controlled, calculated. Not gangsters. Not street-level criminals. Something worse. I clenched my fists as one of them scanned the alley before turning to me. Where's the boy? And just like that, I realized I had stepped into something much bigger than I could have imagined. My mind moved fast. These men weren't street thugs. They were professionals. The kind of people who work for power, not chaos. The way they carried themselves, their posture, the lack of emotion on their faces, told me everything I needed to know. They were here for the boy. I kept my stance neutral, my breath even. I don't know what you're talking about. The man closest to me tilted his head slightly, studying me. We saw him run. Where did he go? I shrugged. Maybe he wasn't interested in making new friends. The second man exhaled, his patience wearing thin. You don't want to get involved in this. Too late. I could feel the alley tightening around me, the walls closing in. They weren't asking. They were deciding what to do next. Then the first man sighed, disappointed. A shame? He moved fast. I barely dodged his reach, shifting just in time to block the second guy's grab. Years of training snapped into place. I twisted, my elbow striking the first man's jaw. He stumbled, but the second one was already on me. A sharp hit to my ribs sent pain shooting through my side. Damn, these guys weren't just strong. They were trained. I didn't give them another chance. I grabbed a trash can lid and swung it hard, smashing it into the second guy's chest. He grunted, staggering back. Then I did the only thing I could. I ran. My boots pounded against the pavement as I darted through the back streets, weaving through alleys I knew too well. My breath came fast, but I didn't slow down. I needed to find the kid, because whoever he was, whoever was after him, this was bigger than a simple street crime. And I had just painted a target on my back. I didn't stop running until I was at least 5 blocks away. The city noise dulled in this part of town, the flickering streetlights barely keeping the darkness at bay. I leaned against a cold brick wall, catching my breath. My ribs throbbed, but I ignored it. I had bigger problems. Where was the boy? I scanned my surroundings, eyes sharp. The streets were empty, silent. Then I heard it, a faint rustling. I turned my head. Near a stack of crates, a shadow moved. Small. Hesitant. Leo. I exhaled, stepping closer. Hey, I said, keeping my voice steady. It's me. He didn't move at first. His small hands gripped the edge of the crate, his breathing uneven. I softened my tone. You're safe. Slowly, his face peeked out. His eyes were wide, filled with something far beyond just fear. This kid wasn't just scared. He was running from something much worse. You shouldn't have helped me, he whispered. My stomach twisted. Why? He swallowed hard. Because now they'll come after you too. Leo's words sat like a stone in my stomach. Because now they'll come after you too. I crouched beside him, keeping my voice steady. Who are they? Leo hesitated, his small fingers gripping the crate like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His chest rose and fell quickly, the panic still fresh in his eyes. I don't know exactly, he whispered, but they're dangerous. I already figured that much. But it wasn't just about them anymore. It was about why they were after him. I glanced back toward the street. No sign of the men in suits. But they weren't the kind to give up. We have to go, I said, standing up. Leo flinched. Where? Good question. I wasn't exactly swimming in safe houses. I took a breath. Somewhere they won't expect. Leo hesitated, then nodded. He trusted me, at least for now. But that trust wouldn't mean much if I didn't get us out of here in one piece. I led him through a maze of alleyways, my senses on high alert. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every car that passed made my shoulders tense. We finally reached a small convenience store. The neon sign buzzed, flickering as if it might give out at any second. It wasn't much, but it was a place to regroup. I guided Leo inside. The smell of stale coffee and old linoleum filled the air. A bored cashier barely glanced at us as we made our way to the back. I grabbed 2 bottles of water and a couple of protein bars. Eat, I told him. Leo took the bar with shaky hands, peeling it open but not eating right away. His eyes stayed on me. You're not asking who I am, he said. I opened my water bottle and took a sip before meeting his gaze. I figure you'll tell me when you're ready. Something flickered across his face. Relief, maybe. He nodded slowly. But we didn't have time to linger. I paid for the food and led Leo out the back exit. The city stretched before us, dark and endless. And somewhere out there, the men in suits were still looking for him. For us. We had to disappear. And fast. I knew just a place. A rundown motel on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place where no one asked questions as long as you had cash. Leo stuck close to me as we moved through the night, his small steps quick but hesitant. He was exhausted, but fear kept him going. I understood that feeling too well. The motel's neon sign flickered, casting a sickly red glow over the parking lot. I walked up to the front desk, pulling a few crumpled bills from my pocket. Room for the night, I said. The clerk barely looked up before shoving a key toward me. Room 12. I nodded and took the key. No names. No ID. Just how I liked it. Inside the room, the air was stale, the carpet worn thin, the walls covered in peeling wallpaper. But the door had a lock, and that was all that mattered. Leo sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his hands. He looked small in the oversized hoodie I had grabbed for him at the store. I pulled a chair up in front of him. You ready to talk? He exhaled slowly. Then, finally, my dad is the one they're after. That wasn't what I expected. I leaned forward. Your dad? Who is he? Leo hesitated. He works for powerful people. He found out something he wasn't supposed to. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just a kidnapping. It was a cover-up. And Leo wasn't just a kid on the run. He was a target. I ran a hand through my hair, piecing together what little I knew. Leo's father had found out something dangerous. Dangerous enough to put his own son at risk. I had been in my fair share of high-stakes situations as a cop, but this was something else. Leo fidgeted with the hem of his hoodie. My dad told me to run. He said if something happened to him, I needed to disappear. The weight of his words settled between us. His father wasn't just missing. He was dead. And now, the people responsible were tying up loose ends. I exhaled. They want you gone? Leo nodded. His voice was barely a whisper. They think I know something. I cursed under my breath. This wasn't just about keeping him safe. If they were willing to go this far, it meant Leo knew something important. even if he didn't realize it yet. I needed to find out what, and I needed to do it before the men in suits found us. The knock on the motel door came too soon. Too precise. Leo stiffened, eyes going wide. I motioned for him to stay silent, then reached for the gun tucked into my waistband. I moved to the door, keeping to the side. Who is it? No answer. The knock came again, harder this time. I glanced at Leo. His breathing was shallow, his fists clenched in his lap. Whoever was out there, they weren't here by accident. I took a slow breath and unlocked the window instead. The moment the third knock came, I pushed it open. Go, I whispered to Leo. He hesitated, only for a second, before climbing out. The moment his feet hit the ground outside, I moved. The door burst open. A man in a dark suit stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room. He barely had time to register that it was empty before I swung. The gun in his hand clattered to the floor as my fist connected with his jaw. I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag and bolted through the window after Leo. The night swallowed us whole as we ran. I didn't know where we were going. All I knew was we couldn't stop. The cold air stung my face as Leo and I sprinted down the empty road, the motel shrinking behind us. My pulse hammered in my ears, drowning out everything but the sound of our frantic footsteps. We had seconds before they regrouped. I scanned the area, searching for any escape route. The street stretched long and empty, a bad place to be when you were being hunted. Then I saw it, an old storm drain, partially covered by a rusted metal grate, just off the sidewalk. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I grabbed Leo's wrist and pulled him toward it. In here, I hissed. His eyes widened in horror. You want us to go down there? You want to be caught? That shut him up. He helped me pry the grate open, just enough to slip through. I dropped down first, my boots hitting damp concrete. Then Leo followed, his small frame trembling as he landed beside me. The moment he was in, I pulled the grate back into place. Darkness swallowed us. The air was damp and thick with the scent of mold and rust. Water dripped from the ceiling, the sound echoing through the tunnel like a slow, steady heartbeat. I placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. Stay quiet. He nodded, his breath shaky. Above us, the sound of heavy footsteps pounded against the pavement. I held my breath. A shadow passed over the grate. Then another. One of the men spoke, his voice sharp. They couldn't have gone far. The second one cursed. Check the alleys. They're on foot. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, finally, the footsteps faded. Leo let out a shuddering breath. I didn't relax. Not yet. We're not out of this, I whispered. We need to keep moving. Leo swallowed hard but nodded. And so, in the dark tunnels beneath the city, we kept running. Because they weren't giving up. And neither was I. We walked through the tunnels for what felt like hours, the damp air pressing in around us. Leo stayed close, his small steps hesitant. My mind raced. We needed a plan. Hiding wouldn't be enough. Not against men like that. But fighting them? That was a death sentence. I needed help. And I knew just the person to call. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't used in years. Dean Carter. He was the only person I trusted. A former detective who had seen the same corruption I had, and walked away from it just like me. I hit dial. The phone rang once. Twice. Then, a familiar voice answered. I was wondering when you'd come crawling back. I exhaled. Not the time, Dean. A pause. Then his voice lost its sarcasm. What's wrong? I'm in trouble. I need a place to lay low. And I need information. Dean sighed. Where are you? Underground. Another pause. Then, head to the old train depot. No one goes there anymore. I'll meet you. I ended the call and turned to Leo. We have a plan? He didn't look convinced. Can we trust him? I hesitated, then nodded. We don't have a choice. And so, we kept moving, toward a man I hadn't seen in years, and toward answers I wasn't sure I was ready for. The train depot was a graveyard of rust and decay. Old tracks stretched into darkness, long abandoned by the city. Graffiti covered the crumbling walls, and shattered glass crunched beneath my boots as we stepped inside. Leo clung to my side, his small hands clenched into fists. Then, from the shadows, footsteps. I tensed. My fingers curled toward the knife hidden in my jacket. Then a figure emerged. Dean. He hadn't changed much. His hair was a little grayer, his face lined with years of regret. But his sharp eyes still held that same calculating intelligence. He looked at me, then at Leo. "This the kid?" I nodded. "His name's Leo." Dean exhaled. "You always did find trouble, Sam." I crossed my arms. "Are you going to help or not?" Dean studied me for a moment, then jerked his head toward the back of the depot. "Come on." We followed him inside, deeper into the abandoned station. Dust swirled in the air, the dim light casting long shadows. Dean sat on a rusted bench and leaned forward. "Start talking." I told him everything. About the men, the SUV, Leo's father, the danger we were in. When I finished, Dean ran a hand down his face. "Damn, yeah." He exhaled. "You don't know who these men are?" I shook my head. Dean's expression darkened. "Then you need to. Because if they're who I think they are." He looked at Leo, something almost like pity in his eyes. "What?" I demanded. Dean leaned back. "Then you're both as good as dead." The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Dean's words hit like a bullet. "You're both as good as dead." Leo tensed beside me, his small frame rigid with fear. I clenched my jaw. "You know who they are?" Dean sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "I have a damn good idea." I leaned in. "Tell me." He hesitated. For the first time, I saw something I never expected to see in Dean Carter. Fear. He exhaled, shaking his head. "The people hunting this kid, they're not just criminals. They're ghosts. People with money, power, and no names on record. If they want someone gone, that person ceases to exist." My stomach tightened. Leo's father, Dean continued, wasn't just some corporate whistleblower. He was involved in something deep, something the government, the feds, hell, maybe even the military, wants buried. I turned to Leo. "What did your dad tell you before he disappeared?" Leo swallowed. His voice was barely a whisper. "He told me if anything happened, I had to run. He said someone would come looking for me." His hands trembled. "And he said never to say the name." I frowned. "What name?" Leo hesitated. Then, in a barely audible whisper, he said it. "Blackthorn." The room seemed to freeze. Dean shot to his feet, knocking over a rusted kin in the process. "Jesus Christ, Sam," he hissed. "Do you have any idea what this means?" I held my ground. "Then tell me." Dean ran a hand through his hair. "Blackthorn isn't a person. It's an operation, a secret one. The kind that doesn't officially exist." His voice lowered. "People who dig too deep into it, they don't just disappear. They're erased." I exhaled, the weight of the situation pressing against my ribs. Leo wasn't just running from hired guns. He was running from an entire system designed to bury people like his father. And now I was in the crosshairs too. Dean paced the length of the abandoned station, rubbing his temples. "This is worse than I thought," he muttered. "They won't stop." I looked at Leo, who sat quietly on the bench, staring down at his hands. He was just a kid who had lost everything and now had an invisible army hunting him. I turned back to Dean. "What do we do?" He shook his head. "Sam, you're in over your head." "No kidding." Dean exhaled sharply. "Look, I can help you get out of town. I have contacts, people who can make you disappear." Leo's head snapped up. "No." I glanced at him. "Leo, I don't want to disappear," he said, his voice shaking but firm. "I want to find out why they took my dad." His words settled between us. Dean let out a long sigh. "Kid, if you do this, you don't come back. There's no normal life waiting for you at the end of this road." Leo clenched his fists. "My dad didn't run." He looked at me, his eyes searching. "I don't want to run either." "Damn." I met Dean's gaze. "Then we fight?" Dean groaned. "I knew you were going to say that." I crossed my arms. "Are you in or not?" Dean muttered something under his breath before finally nodding. "Fine, but we need a plan." I nodded. "Then let's get started." Dean's old contacts had left behind enough breadcrumbs to start digging. We sat in the dim light of an old warehouse, Dean's laptop whirring as he hacked into a private database. Leo sat beside me, silent but watching everything. Then, Dean froze. "Got something," he murmured. I leaned over. On the screen was a classified document, redacted in all the wrong places. And right there, buried under layers of encryption, was a single name. Daniel Harper. Leo gasped. That's my dad. Dean's expression darkened. Then we just stepped on a landmine. The screen flickered, and suddenly, a warning popped up. Unauthorized access detected. Dean cursed and yanked the power cord, shutting it down. Too late. I turned to Leo. We need to go. Now. The kid nodded, fear creeping into his features. Because if we had found them, they had found us. We barely made it out of the warehouse before the first shot rang out. The bullet whizzed past my ear, slamming into a metal beam behind me. Leo let out a sharp gasp, grabbing onto my sleeve. Run! I shouted, yanking him forward. Dean was already ahead of us, leading the way through the maze of abandoned buildings. The sound of boots pounding against concrete sent adrenaline coursing through my veins. They had found us. Another shot rang out, and I shoved Leo down just in time. The bullet slammed into a rusted crate, sending shards of metal flying. We needed cover. Fast. Dean rounded a corner, spotting an open garage door leading into an old auto shop. In here, he yelled. We darted inside, slamming the door shut behind us. I pressed my back against the wall, my breath ragged. Leo clung to my jacket, his eyes wide. They found us. I met Dean's gaze. We need to disappear. Again. Dean nodded. And fast. Because this time, they weren't just chasing us. They were hunting us. The auto shop was quiet except for our heavy breathing. The air smelled of oil and rust, and the only light came from a single flickering bulb. Leo clung to my sleeve, his small hands trembling. I placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, keeping my own fear buried. Dean peeked through the cracks in the garage door. His expression was grim. They're still out there. 3 men, armed. I exhaled sharply. We were trapped. No back exit. No way to slip out unseen. And they weren't the kind to wait forever. Leo's voice was small. What do we do? Dean looked at me. Waiting. I ran through our options. We couldn't take them head on. Not without a plan. Then I spotted it. A set of old coveralls hanging by the workbench. And beside them, a pair of mechanic's hats. I grabbed them. Tossed one to Dean. Put it on. He caught it, frowning. You think they're stupid? No, I said, already pulling the cap low over my face. But they don't expect us to walk out the front door. Leo's eyes widened as he realized what I was doing. You mean? I crouched in front of him. Do exactly as I say. Walk like you belong here. Leo nodded. Dean sighed, but didn't argue. He pulled on the coveralls, adjusting his posture. We only had one shot. I took a deep breath, then pushed the garage door open. The cool night air swept in. The 3 men stood across the street, scanning the area. We stepped out casually, heads down, moving like workers who had just finished their shift. One of the men turned. I felt his gaze land on us. My pulse pounded. Keep walking. Leo's grip on my hand tightened, but he didn't stop. We reached the street. One step, then another. Then, hey, one of the men barked. Leo flinched beside me. I kept walking. Did you see anyone come through here? The man called out. Dean turned slightly, his voice calm. Nah, place has been dead all night. The man hesitated. I could feel his eyes on us. Then, he turned away. We rounded the corner, ducking into the shadows. Dean let out a low chuckle. You're insane. I smirked. And you love it. But I wasn't smiling for long. Because now, we needed a real plan. And fast. We moved quickly, sticking to the darkest alleys and abandoned streets. The city stretched around us like a maze, every turn hiding another danger. Dean led us to an old parking garage, one of his old safe spots from his days as a detective. It smelled of dust and exhaust, but it was quiet. Safe. For now. I leaned against a concrete pillar, running a hand through my hair. We need to find out more about Blackthorn. Dean exhaled. You don't just find out about Blackthorn, Sam. They bury their secrets deep. Leo tugged on my sleeve. My dad kept files. I turned to him. What kind of files? Leo bit his lip. I don't know. He never let me see them. But he hid them somewhere safe. A small spark of hope lit in my chest. If we can find those files, I said slowly, we might have a way to fight back. Dean shook his head. You want to go digging into a government-level conspiracy? I met his eyes. I want to end this. Dean sighed. Fine, but we're going to need help. Dean knew a guy. We drove across town in a stolen car, keeping a low profile. Leo sat in the back, silent but alert. When we reached our destination, I almost laughed. A 24-hour laundromat. This is the place? I asked. Dean smirked. You'd be surprised where the best hackers hide. Inside, the place smelled of detergent and mildew. A few broken washing machines lined the walls. And in the farthest corner, a woman sat, tapping away on a laptop covered in stickers. Dean led us over. Lena. The woman didn't look up. You bringing me problems again, Carter? Dean grinned. Always. Lena finally looked at us. Her sharp eyes scanned Leo, then me. Who's the kid? Someone who needs information, I said. Fast. Lena exhaled. What kind of information? Dean hesitated. Then, Blackthorn. The entire mood shifted. Lena's fingers froze over the keyboard. Then, she shut the laptop. Nope. I frowned. What? I don't touch Blackthorn, Lena said, standing up. You should do the same. Dean grabbed her arm. Lena, we don't have time for this. She pulled away. Do you know what happens to people who try to expose them? Silence. Lena's voice lowered. They vanish. Leo spoke up. His voice was small but firm. My dad vanished. Lena's expression softened. She looked at me, then at Leo. Then she cursed. Fine. But if I do this, we do it my way. I nodded. Deal. She reopened the laptop. And just like that, we stepped into something we couldn't come back from. Lena's fingers flew over the keyboard. Lines of code flashed across the screen. Then, she found something. Holy. Lena sat back, eyes wide. I leaned in. What? She turned the screen toward me. A classified Blackthorn report. And at the very top, Daniel Harper. Terminated. Leo's breath hitched. Terminated. My stomach turned to ice. Dean, read further. It says he was eliminated under special directive. Lena tapped the screen. And look at this. There's one more target. I followed her finger. My blood ran cold. Leo Harper. I clenched my jaw. They're not just cleaning up their mess. Dean exhaled. They want to erase the whole family. Leo was trembling now. I placed a hand on his shoulder. They're not going to touch you. He swallowed hard. How do you know? I met his eyes. Because I won't let them. Leo sat stiffly in his chair, his fingers clutching the edges of the desk as if bracing for impact. His name was on a kill list, right below his father's. Dean exhaled sharply. This just got worse. Lena's hands hovered over her laptop. You're already in too deep. The second I cracked into their system, they knew someone was looking. They're coming. I straightened. How long do we have? Lena bit her lip. Hours. Maybe less. Leo's breath hitched. I saw the panic creeping in, his small frame trembling. I crouched beside him, my voice steady. Hey, look at me. His wide eyes met mine. I'm not letting them take you, I promised. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. You really think we can stop them? I nodded. But we can't do it here. Lena snapped her laptop shut. She's right. We have to move now. Dean grabbed his gun from the table. Then let's go. But as we turned toward the door, we heard it. The faint rumble of engines. My stomach dropped. Lena paled. They're here. I peeked out the window. A convoy of black SUVs was rolling down the street, their headlights cutting through the darkness. I cursed. Too fast. Dean pulled Leo back. We need an exit. Lena pointed to the laundry chute in the back. That leads to the alley. I yanked the chute door open. Leo, go first. Leo hesitated for only a second before climbing inside. His small frame disappeared into the darkness. Dean went next. Then Lena. The front door exploded inward. I dove into the chute. The last thing I saw was a man in a black suit raising his gun. Then, I was falling. We landed in a heap behind the laundromat, the smell of damp concrete heavy in the air. No time to recover. I grabbed Leo's hand and pulled him up. Run. We tore through the alley, feet pounding against the pavement. Behind us, gunfire ripped through the night. Bullets slammed into dumpsters, ricocheting off metal. Dean cursed. They're shooting to kill. Lena gasped, gripping her side. She'd been grazed. I grabbed her arm, keeping her moving. Almost there. A few more blocks. We just needed distance. We rounded a corner, only to find another SUV waiting. The doors swung open. Armed men poured out. Leo yanked on my hand, his breath ragged. What do we do? I gritted my teeth. Think. Then I saw it. A construction site just across the street. Scaffolding. Machinery. A maze of places to disappear. I made a choice. This way. I yanked Leo forward. Dean and Lena followed, bullets whizzing past our heads. We reached the site, diving between half-built structures. Leo tripped. I caught him just in time. Dean yanked a metal pipe from the ground. We're not making it out of here without a fight. I exhaled. Then we fight. The gunmen split up, sweeping the construction site in groups. I crouched behind a stack of wooden planks, pulling Leo close. Stay here, no matter what happens. His lip trembled. But, no matter what. Leo nodded, eyes shining. Dean took position behind a forklift, gripping his metal pipe like a bat. Lena leaned against the scaffolding, her injuries slowing her down, but her eyes sharp. I stayed in the shadows, my heart hammering. Then I saw them, 2 men moving toward Dean. I acted fast. I yanked a rusted wrench from the ground and hurled it. It clanged against the metal beams, a distraction. Dean used it. He swung the pipe hard, cracking it across the first man's skull. The second whirled toward me. I was faster. I rammed my knee into his gut, grabbed his wrist, and twisted the gun out of his hand. He staggered. I knocked him out cold. Lena gasped from behind me. Sam, look out. I turned, just in time to see another man raising his gun. Too late to dodge. A gunshot exploded through the air. I braced for impact. But it wasn't me who got shot. The gunman collapsed, a bullet through his chest. Behind him stood a man in a dark trench coat, lowering his weapon. My stomach twisted in shock, because I knew that man. And if he was here, everything just changed. The man holstered his gun and stepped closer, his cold eyes locked on mine. Been a long time, Reed. I clenched my fists. You shouldn't be here. Dean muttered a curse. Tell me that's not who I think it is. Leo looked between us, confused. Who is he? I exhaled. Ethan Graves. Leo frowned. Oh. Dean scowled. A ghost. Ethan smirked. I prefer problem solver. I stepped closer, keeping my voice low. What are you doing here? Ethan crossed his arms. Stopping you from getting killed. I didn't trust him. I never trusted him. But he just saved my life. Lena groaned. We don't have time for this. Who is he? Dean rubbed his temples. An ex-agent. Worked deep ops for the government. Then vanished. If he's here, that means this is worse than we thought. Ethan smirked. Correct. I clenched my jaw. Why now? Why help us? Ethan's smile faded. Because Blackthorn needs to be stopped? That caught me off guard. Ethan Graves didn't help people. But if he was telling the truth, then maybe we finally had a shot at winning this fight. I studied Ethan's face, looking for a catch, a lie, anything that would explain why a man like him was suddenly on our side. Ethan Graves wasn't the kind of person who helped without a reason. You really expect me to believe you want to stop Blackthorn? I asked, my voice sharp. He shrugged. Believe what you want. But you don't have a lot of options. Dean folded his arms. Why do you care about taking them down? Ethan sighed, glancing at Leo. Because I used to be one of them. The words hit like a gunshot. Leo's eyes widened, and Dean tensed. I gritted my teeth. Explain? Ethan ran a hand through his hair. I was part of the original team that built Blackthorn's intelligence network. Back then, we thought we were protecting the country. He let out a bitter laugh. Turns out, we were just building a system for powerful men to use as their personal kill list. Leo's breath hitched. Ethan continued, his voice low. Your father, Leo. He found something buried deep in the system. Something big enough that they erased him for it. Leo swallowed hard. What did he find? Ethan's jaw tightened. Proof that Blackthorn isn't just an operation. It's an entire shadow government. Silence. The weight of it crashed over us like a wave. Dean exhaled. Well, that's just great. Lena muttered a curse under her breath. We're dead. Leo clenched his fists. Then we have to stop them. I nodded. We're not running anymore. Ethan smirked. Good. He pulled out a tablet, placing it on the table. The screen lit up with a classified facility blueprint. Because I know exactly where to hit them. Blackthorn's main intelligence facility was heavily guarded, hidden beneath an unmarked government building. Ethan outlined the plan. There's one way in that they don't expect. An underground service tunnel runs beneath the facility. It's our best shot at getting inside. Dean frowned. And once we're inside, Ethan pulled up another screen. We find Leo's father's files and expose them. Once the truth is out, Blackthorn won't be able to hide anymore. Lena shifted. That's assuming we get out alive. I exhaled. We don't have a choice. Leo met my gaze, determination burning in his young eyes. I want to help. I crouched beside him. You already have, but I need you safe. He frowned. I can do more. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Leo, you're the reason we're fighting. But I need you to trust me to finish this. After a moment, he nodded. Okay. Ethan stood. Then let's move. We hit them at dawn. We all exchanged glances. No turning back now. The tunnel entrance was hidden beneath an abandoned building near the government facility. We moved silently, weapons ready, hearts pounding. Dean Pride opened the service hatch, revealing a long, dark tunnel. Ethan climbed in first, scanning ahead. Clear. Let's go. We dropped into the tunnel one by one, the damp air thick with dust. Lena adjusted the blueprints on her tablet. We have to move fast. Security cycles every 7 minutes. We moved quickly, the metal grates beneath our feet rattling softly. Then, we reached the access panel. Ethan hacked into the security system, disabling the main cameras. 30 seconds before they notice, he muttered. Dean Pride opened the vent leading into the main facility. Let's go. One by one, we slipped inside. The facility was cold, sterile. Rows of servers hummed softly, and the walls were lined with data storage vaults. Lena whispered, "We're in." I exhaled. Now the real fight began. We split up. Ethan and Lena worked on retrieving the data, while Dean and I kept watch. The facility was eerily quiet. Too quiet. Leo's father's files were buried deep in an off-site encrypted storage system. Lena's fingers flew over the keyboard. Almost there, just a few more seconds. Dean tensed. Hurry up. Then, the alarms blared. Ethan cursed. They know we're here. I yanked my gun from my holster. We're out of time. Lena's screen flashed download complete. We got it. But before we could celebrate, the doors burst open. Blackthorn's security team swarmed in, weapons raised. Ethan fired first. The room erupted into chaos. I grabbed Lena, dragging her behind a console. Get the files to Leo. She nodded, shoving the drive into her pocket. Dean covered us as we moved, taking down 2 guards in rapid succession. Ethan fought like a demon, clearing a path. But more were coming. I turned to Lena. Go. Get out of here. She hesitated. Sam. I shoved her toward the exit. Go. She ran. Dean and Ethan fell in a step beside me. We weren't making it out without a fight, and that was fine by me. Lena made it out, but we were trapped. Blackthorn's strike team closed in, forcing us to retreat toward the upper levels. Bullets tore through glass panels. Sparks flew. Dean pulled a second pistol from his belt. This isn't looking good. Ethan smirked. Since when does it ever? We made it to a high-security corridor, metal doors slamming shut behind us. A voice echoed through the intercom. You should have walked away, Reed. I clenched my jaw. I knew that voice. General Caleb Monroe, the man behind Blackthorn. I turned to Ethan. How do we get to him? Ethan smirked. Follow me. The corridor hummed with tension, the overhead fluorescent lights flickering slightly. General Caleb Monroe had just made his presence known over the intercom, his voice cold, calculating, in control. You should have walked away, Reed. I tightened my grip on my gun. No turning back now. Dean reloaded his weapon, his face tight with focus. How many men does he have? Ethan checked his watch. Too many. He looked at me. We have one shot at this. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Armed Blackthorn agents were closing in. Move! I shouted. We sprinted toward the central command room. Every second counted. Ethan led the way, taking out a security panel. The metal doors slid open, and we found ourselves in a large control room, filled with monitors, high-tech security feeds, and rows of armed men waiting for us. The second we stepped in, the gunfire erupted. We dove for cover. Bullets ripped through computer monitors, sparks flying as servers exploded under the assault. I fired back, taking down 2 men as Dean flanked right, grabbing a riot shield off the wall and using it to push forward. Ethan was brutal, calculated, taking down enemy after enemy with precision. But they kept coming. Then Monroe stepped in. The old general stood at the far end of the room, flanked by his elite guards, his face unreadable. "You really think you're going to change anything?" he asked, voice calm. I leveled my gun at him. "Leo's father already did." His expression flickered. Lena's voice crackled over the radio in my ear. "It's done. The files are out. Everyone knows the truth." Monroe's face darkened. I smirked. "You've already lost." Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. "Maybe," he said, "but that doesn't mean I'm going down alone." He pressed a button on the console. A countdown appeared on the screens. Self-destruct sequence initiated. I cursed. "Ethan, I see it," he yelled, moving to override the system. "They're going to burn the whole place down." Dean turned to me. "We need to get out of here now." I made a decision. I rushed Monroe. He saw me coming but wasn't fast enough. I tackled Monroe, slamming him into the console, sending sparks flying. His fist came up, clipping my jaw, but I barely felt it. Everything blurred. Nothing mattered except stopping him. Monroe grabbed for a gun. I knocked it away. His hands locked around my throat. I gasped for air. Then a gunshot. Monroe's grip slackened. I gasped, stumbling back as his body hit the floor. Ethan stood behind him, gun raised, expression unreadable. I coughed. "About time." Ethan smirked. "I like the dramatic moments." Dean pulled me up. "We have 2 minutes before this place goes up." We ran. The hallways blurred as alarms blared, red lights flashing. Leo's voice came over the radio. "Hurry." We reached the exit just as flames roared through the corridors. The moment we hit the open air, the building exploded behind us. Heat rushed over us, debris raining down. I pulled Leo into a tight hug. "It's over." The files were out. The world knew the truth. Blackthorn was finished. But we had paid a price. Ethan walked toward us, his expression tired but satisfied. "So, what now?" Dean chuckled. "We disappear." I looked down at Leo. He finally had a chance at a real life. I smiled. "Yeah, we disappear. For good." 3 months later. The world had changed. The Blackthorn scandal had rocked governments, taken down entire agencies. The people behind it were either in prison or dead. I stood on a quiet dock, the ocean stretching before me. Leo sat beside me, his face calmer than I'd ever seen. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. For the first time in a long time, Ethan and Dean walked up, bags over their shoulders. "Ready?" Ethan asked. I exhaled. No more running. No more fighting. Just a fresh start. I nodded. "Yeah, let's go." And together, we walked toward our new beginning. The fight was over, and we had won.